And she says to herself, "You know what they do to trannies, you stupid bitch. You've heard the stories and seen the Polaroids, and unless you feel like posing for the mutilated faggot of the month inspirational calendar, you better dig deep now." Well, that's likely to get me a strike as well. Hello, boys, boosters and body horror, one and all. So glad to see you once again. I know that it may not seem such a long time since I turned the camera on. I know that I made a little clip at the beginning of the last one I made, but honestly, in terms of actually switching on this thing, it's been for long lengths of time. It really has been forever, and I'm sorry. Now, this may seem like a rather odd topic to choose to return to, especially given that, in light of its vampiric nature, I had intended to return to the Initiation-related literature around Halloween time. But this involves the undead, in essence, so it still counts in my view. It's still spooky. But you needn't worry if you didn't see the first video I made in this series, or you saw it but it's so long ago that you've forgotten, or the subject matter was just so dreadful that you've deliberately erased it from your consciousness. I shall explain all. You may notice I'm dressed in black at the moment. I've just come from a funeral. I needed some lighting up a bit, and I thought, well, what better thing to light me up than to read some zombie fiction? Of course, it could be symbolic, because it could also be the death of good quality literature as we know it. At least for the first chapter that I did read, it may be wonderful from this point onwards, in which case you might consider this to be a wedding costume, made between me, the poor quality plebeian who doesn't understand what a true artist looks like, and this strange thing that I'm going to read now. Something that people on a higher plane of existence and comprehension manage to get straight away. Since I read the book Manhunt that I'm about to review in instalments as usual, there's a great ream of people that I suppose are either transgender or what you'd now describe as gender non-conforming. You know, forever ago I actually made a video in which I said, what the heck is a gender non-conforming boy? I'd sound positively fossilised if I said that now, although to be honest I still don't quite understand what it means, but at least a word or expression that I know, which is always a start when you're dealing with grandpa. Others were what again you'd now call allies, supporters, or just book channels generally. I saw one channel called Twisted Female, who came at it from a kind of feminist perspective, and two that were maybe indifferent, for want of a better word. My review was the only other dissenting voice, but it might not be forever. As I say, it might be wonderful from this point onwards. Again, don't worry if you didn't see me reading the first chapter. All you need to know is it's kind of zombie fiction. This one is written by a trans activist. That's why I made reference to gender. And all that happens in this semi-apocalyptic world is that all men, all biological men that is, have become these kind of undead things, except they don't just eat women, they also rape them, either in addition to or alongside eating men, even to the point of impregnating them and giving them sort of cannibalistic babies. I know it sounds weird already. The zombies, for want of a better word, are caused to be that way as a result of a very degenerative virus. We don't know who released it, where it came from, or why it affects men only, but it's called T-Rex because that is both hilarious and clever. And these two women, who are of course trans women, called Fran and Beth, about whom we know almost nothing, virtually no description other than the fact that they're both trans women, one of them has a scar and one of them has a penis, because of course she does, it's 2022, are in the woods with a bow and arrow and they're shooting things, except that's not the only danger, because also in this world are these very insane radical feminists who don't like trans women. Quite why they're not able to team up with them temporarily in order to kill these things, because neither of them want to get raped or eaten, is never explained as yet. Why, if the argument is we must have women's only spaces, they can't come to an agreement, they say, all right, you kill the zombies over there, we'll kill the zombies over here. That's not happened yet. It might, but we'll see. So why, you may ask, should any of this unoriginal ghastliness, rife with cliches that we recognise from every other book, film or video game involving zombie or end-of-the-world scenarios, and anything we don't recognise at least has a vague counterpart in one such mode of storytelling, be of any concern to us whatsoever? Well, because, well, see for yourself. If I actually read this tweet out loud, I'll get a strike for sure. Observe how this author of this work talked about a well-beloved a children's author of Harry Potter books, Miss Rowling, actually dies in it halfway through. Because what is a nicer and more efficient means of getting your point across and proving your moral righteousness than killing a rival author of superior talent? Before going any further, I want to make a few things completely clear. I will say that the author deserves some points for originality. I'll explain what I mean by this. First of all, it is typical of zombie fiction to show either a very strong man, or indeed a strong woman, taking charge for all things. So to turn that around a bit and make a strong trans woman as the lead, sorry Caitlin, you know I had to, it was irresistible, is something we don't typically see in the horror genre, be they books or films. It is also interesting to note that the human antagonists are not, as in Resident Evil, corrupt corporations and mad scientists who want to control everything, nor indeed are they morally bankrupt soldiers, as in 28 Days Later, but rather a paramilitary cult of mad radical feminists who believe in biology. An implausible enemy, but who's to say that it wouldn't happen one day the way the author seems to half believe that it would. It's also worth noting that it's not the only time horror has been used to portray something other than the most obvious. In other zombie fiction, for instance, quite apart from the obvious symbolism of disease, it seems to have been another way of fending off racism, because zombies have long been associated, rightly or wrongly, with voodoo, Haiti, witch doctors and all the rest of it. And that is why films such as Night of the Living Dead were such major breakthroughs, for not only were the zombies in this film of more or less any colour, anyone that had been bitten or infected could become a zombie, but it also flipped everything on its head by making the hero a black man. Quite hard-hitting stuff. In the 60s, when segregation was very much in place in southern states of America to varying degrees, the vampire, too, has tended, at least in more modern fantasy, to be a depiction either for outsiderness, promiscuity, homosexuality, disease, anything that makes someone other appears to be personified by the vampire in a perfect metaphor, whatever form he or she may take. The vampire genre is now very different from how it was in the 19th century and has been used in many different ways. It's very rare to find a vampire now that's entirely one-dimensional, entirely a monster. And even the werewolf, quite apart from having the obvious implications of mental illness due to split personality, if we're going to refer to JK Rowling again, she has the character, the werewolf, Professor Lupin, ingenious wizard by day, but monstrous canine beast by night when the full moon comes out. And she has said that this is a metaphor for HIV. Given the character's great stigma amongst his fellow wizards and the difficulty he has in procuring potions to stop the worst and most vile symptoms of his lycanthropy, it's not difficult to see what she means by that. So there's nothing wrong with or unusual about using myth or fantasy or the supernatural or the horror genre, or given that this particular zombie fiction is motivated by an imaginary virus, I suppose it's a form of science fiction, as a vehicle for social commentary or a symbol for a political position. The trouble is, this particular author is about as subtle as a flying mallet when it comes to putting forward her positions, in portraying men as the enemy, in portraying all the biological women we get to meet in the first chapter as just vicious people who, for reasons that are, as I say, not explained, killers of trans people and zombies alike. And in the chapter that I left off, one of the trans women was just about to shoot an arrow right in the direction of one of these people, the TERFs as they're called, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, and the chapter ends. Why she wants to do this and draw attention to herself is anyone's guess, but maybe we'll see as we carry on into the next chapter. Now, I've stood here long enough, I've chatted long enough, let's move a bit. By the way, I forgot to mention that the last time I did make a video on this subject, I got one comment that said that it was sexist. To this day, I'm not sure whether she was referring to me or the subject matter, but we'll see how we proceed from this point. Back to Jackanory now, I think. Eyes sitting comfortably. Then let's begin. Second chapter is called crotch rocket. I wonder what that could mean. And it opens out by saying, "She moved," hollered Beth plaintively as they tore downhill through the woods. The wounded girl's howl, that's the girl she just shot, echoing behind them. "It's not my fault." Let me think now. You just tried to shoot them and draw attention to yourself, and it's not your fault that they've noticed that you're there. Fine. Fran tried for a single absurd second to remember a tweet she'd once read about whether to run a serpentine or straight when under fire. Yeah, because everyone trusts Twitter's judgment on such things. Then gave up and focused on not running into trees. That sounds even better. One of the people who doesn't like trans people amongst these other women came from Guantanamo Bay, and she's known as Teach. She bends down and the arrow hits another girl. So all these women come after Beth and Fran, the two trans heroines or heroes. They sound pretty dim-witted to me. And there's one woman of note amongst them, and she's described as broad-shouldered and having spiky hair, and she has a crossbow in her hand. Fran and Beth run through a stream, and I'm just going to read this section. Panting, Fran dared to look back up the slope. The turfs, that's the women, were hot on their heels, 8 or 9 of them, with the kind of high-powered hunting crossbows that had all been pillaged from the hunting goods stores within a week of tea day. So, let me just clarify this. There are 2 of them, Fran and Beth, and 8 or 9 of these mad feminists here, and they all have crossbows, but they still thought they could take them on with their bows and that. They're just nuts. And here reference is made to one of them that is a stocky, fierce-looking white girl with a septum piercing. Bear in mind, at this point, we've not been told whether Fran and Beth are black or white, but, you know, one of these antagonists is white, we're told that. She has a septum piercing and thereafter is known as septum piercing. She's jogging out ahead of the others. I'd be doing a bit more than jogging if I was trying to shoot somebody that just tried to kill me. Crossbow held low across her body at an angle, waiting for a shot that would count. Septum piercings coming along with her crossbow, shooting away like a madwoman. There's a rather silly word, brackish, appears again. Still doesn't make sense in context. Septum piercing comes even closer to them, and it's established that Fran was a runner in high school and college. So she was a runner in high school, and she's able to outrun 8 or 9 women. Is that not an argument against trans women competing against biological women? I'm actually not going to complete that sentence. You can save me the strike. The trans woman named Fran has flashbacks of her father, who it's established she looks like, but as she's not been described, and neither is her father, that doesn't mean a great deal. And she says to herself, "You know what they do to trannies, you stupid bitch. You've heard the stories and seen the Polaroids, and unless you feel like posing for the mutilated faggot of the month inspirational calendar, you better dig deep now." Well, that's likely to get me a strike as well, but there's something odd in that. It reminds me of something else we covered in a previous video. Are you sure you're not just a jumpy bitch with clinical paranoia? You'll never get diagnosed because all the psychiatrists are dead or living in, like, Monaco in some really tacky American slum? Yes, that. Makes me think of another sort of OG well-known YouTuber. Which one is it again?
Exposition, rush it out ASAP.
Thank you, Nostalgia Critic, except it's not really exposition, is it? They've not told us anything. They said, "You know what they do to trannies." No, we don't. It's not. They've just said that one of them might kill them, and that's it. And now they're only killing them because they shot first. Fran falls over and hurts her jaw. Lovely. Beth turns and decides to make a stand against septum piercing with a bow and arrow, and then she goes, "Oh, no, don't hurt me, don't hurt me." She crawls away. They're just about to think that it's all over, and then all of a sudden, the one that they called Teach, who was in Guantanamo Bay, is riding after them on a Honda motorbike. That's the eponymous crotch rocket, because Fran's beloved father used to call bikes by that. I'm just thinking on this. Fran looked like her father. I'm guessing now that Fran has become a woman, she doesn't look like her father anymore, unless, of course...
I wish I'd been a girlie, just like my dear papa.
No, ignore me. I'm just thinking out loud at this point. But this woman on the motorbike has a submachine gun that she somehow managed to get hold of, and she's sort of while she's riding at the same time, and it says, "Soon Teach wouldn't be able to miss them if she tried." So is the story going to come to an end there? No, it isn't. Because then all of a sudden, the zombies come out from amongst the trees. Now, let me just read this lyrical poetry. "The men boiled downhill in a shrieking tide, all filthy hair and scabby flaking skin and mouths full of rotten brown teeth. Raw flesh showed under their eyes and at their joints and the corners of their mouths. Well done for saying the word mouths 2 sentences in a row. Seams of it glistened like meaty lava flows between the shifting tectonic plates of their hide. That's not pretentious language at all, is it? At the sight of all this, Teach sees the zombies coming after her, and at this, the feminist named Teach scoots away on her bike and the zombies run after her. So I can only draw from that if you're about to get torn apart by a psychotic feminist, the patriarchy will come and rescue you. Probably not what the author intended to say, but it's what I'm getting from this. So they're just thinking everything's over when all of a sudden the one named Septum Piercing comes back with her crossbow. And I have a problem with that because we were distinctly told that she crawled away from them. Teach came on with a motorbike. She would need to have run faster than motorbike and come past it again without the zombies noticing her. But I guess this is fantasy or science fiction, so maybe she teleported herself, who knows. Then it says Beth was swearing out the side of her mouth. That's the first time it hasn't specified what the swear word is. There's so much profanity in this, I'm telling you. Fran fantasizes about fastening her teeth around this woman's throat, because that's very lovely. Zombies' behaviour is rubbing off on her. And then Septum Piercing. This S word is your fault, you effing monsters, screamed the girl. Ah, we're just going to learn now where the T-Rex virus came from, are we? No, actually, all that happens is that Fran has a weird sexual fantasy about this girl, and we're told that it shoves its way eagerly into her imagination. So yeah, we're not going to learn where the virus came from at all then. And then when she goes away, she says to herself, bet she had white dreads in college, bet she blogged about how her straight boyfriend felt unwelcome at Pride. And then it ends, really. Right, this video is getting rather long, so what I'm actually going to do is a very 2009 sort of thing and split it in half, and I shall post the other half of this video either tomorrow or later in the week. Still, enjoy what's left of Halloween, and if it's been and gone by the time I get this up, then I hope you did enjoy it and enjoy next year's. Thanks very much, hope you enjoy, ta-ta!